In this segment, we consider a framework regarding the micro-momentary processing of stimuli, the componential processing model of emotional appraisal. With this approach, we see that information is responded to and evaluated in an ongoing process. This process occurs moment to moment and is often preconscious. In other words, we are not necessarily consciously paying attention to what we are seeing. The componential processing model of emotion appraisal focuses on the face of the persons involved with social communication, which not only involves talking, but also more importantly, involves listening and nonverbally responding. As a result, paying close attention matters, even if it means doing so with a frame-by-frame analysis of video after the fact. The prevailing approach to understanding emotions has been the basic emotion theory, the BET. This approach sees basic emotions occurring across a person's lifespan and across cultures. However, this approach is more of a folk psychological approach, which is based upon people sharing terms for what they feel internally. This in turn means that they are readily able to communicate these feelings to others. The 7 basic emotions of sadness, disgust, anger, fear, contempt, surprise, and happiness, plus or minus a few, are well known and provide an easy way to understand emotions. However, not only does the interpretation change based upon the context in which facial displays occur and based upon the person displaying the emotions, there are many different variations of each emotion. For instance, happiness is the only positive emotion identified by basic emotion theory, while fear, sadness, anger, disgust, and sometimes contempt are also identified as basic emotions. This means that there's greater variation in negative emotions. In real life, this isn't the case. We all feel more than just happiness. We feel contentment, awe, joy, pleasure, excitement, pride, hopefulness, interest, comfort, and many, many more different positive emotions. And we see these emotions in other people's faces. The great variety of different positive emotions communicated through social media emoticons and emojis tells us there's a lot more variation than predicted by the basic emotion theory. So, while this theory is a great starting place for understanding facial communication and should be recognized as the cornerstone from which modern theory has been built, there is a great deal more to nonverbal communication through the face when one starts digging deeper. Perhaps more important is that when one considers facial display behavior, what is theorized to be basic emotions is not so basic after all. Facial display behavior is often fleeting and incomplete. Across the hundreds of hours of coding facial display behavior by politicians and other notable figures, with the exception of smiles and laughter, rarely have I seen a facial configuration as theorized by the basic emotions theory. While some components of an emotion, such as tightened lips when someone is angry, might be seen, all of the parts don't come together nearly as neatly in the schematic face. Different facial movements do occur together, but timing is everything when you are analyzing facial displays on a frame-by-frame basis. And they matter when you are processing the information a face provides consciously or preconsciously. We respond to these fleeting facial displays even when we are not conscious of doing so. Perhaps the best way of understanding emotions at the micro level, especially when they are communicated by the face, is through the theory developed by Klaus Scheer and his team at the University of Geneva. The componential processing model of emotion appraisal, the CPM, suggests a good deal of complexity as to our processing of relevant stimuli. This slide provides a schematic for understanding how the appraisal process may be represented in facial displays in terms of timing of response. With the componential processing model, we have appraisal domains, with preconscious or conscious cognitive checks as part of them, as we evaluate the world around us on an ongoing basis. The first check we do is to consider how relevant something is. If it is novel by showing up suddenly and having unfamiliar and unpredictable elements, we consciously pay attention to it. If it is pleasant or unpleasant, we will treat it accordingly. We also consider the implications of something by considering whether it is expected or unexpected, as well as whether it will help us meet our goals or gets in the way of them. We then consider how well we can cope with something based upon the level of power and control that we have. And finally, we evaluate behavior based upon how well it matches with or departs from our norms. We evaluate things in terms of whether they violate standards that society holds or that we ourselves hold dear. So, as we can see, this all happens very quickly, with appraisal of any person or event flashing across someone's face extremely swiftly. And different persons, events, or things might be more relevant and as a result more visible on different people's faces. The main thing is knowing what to look for. By breaking the face down into specific movement patterns, in other words, action units, we can get a better idea of what is going on in someone's face. To understand someone, we must first measure their muscular movements in as objective a manner as possible. From the accurate description of the face and its muscular movements, we have more insights into the types of emotions and behavioral intent being communicated. In this slide, we see which facial action movements are connected with what types of appraisals that lead to more fully formed emotions and behavioral intent. This helps us understand more thoroughly those public figures and political leaders that are the focus of our media attention.